Hey dreamers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a mechanic where if you can't jump over something, maybe you could use your jetpack to fly over a gap. I'm going to be going over how I made this jetpack and how you can too. So if you're interested, stick around because I'm going over it right now. Okay, so to get started, the first thing we're going to do is work on the logic, and then we can go ahead and add some animations to make things look better. So I'll open up this player chip here, and this is where we're going to take in controls. So for this, I'm going to make it so that R2 activates the jetpack. Okay, so obviously there's a range on the R2. If we change this to remote, we can see when I press R2, depending on how far I press the trigger, there's a different amount coming out of that signal, right? So we need to take care of that so that you know, it activates once we press past a certain amount. So there's a couple ways we could do it. Easiest way is probably using a calculator and saying greater than some percentage. So if it's past 20%, then it'll be on. So one way to suspend a player in the air is to use something like a mover. So we'll go ahead and set that in the upwards direction, right? And we'll give it some sort of strength. So if we turn that on while this is being held, let's see how that looks. I'll go ahead and jump and then hold R2. Okay, it's too much. And I actually think what we want to do is set this to 0. So now we can see if I jump and then hold R2, we're kind of locked in the air, right? As if we had a jetpack. Go ahead and change this back to possess. So now we can see if we were to try to cross that gap, we could hold R2, and that would keep us in the air for a little bit so that we could actually make it over that jump. Now obviously it's really slow when you're up there like that, and it doesn't look right either, so we still have some more work to do. So I'll get out another mover, and this one is going to take in the left stick, right? So let's get another node. This will give us our stick here. Now, we only really care about the X direction from the stick, right? Now, because we're using the left stick, it's based on the camera. And I'd like to show how that works. So if I just put that in there, we can see that if I hold left on the stick, it's at -1. If I hold right, it's at +1. So +1 is forward, -1 is backwards. So now, let's go ahead and get a mover out. And this one, we'll just set to something like that, like 5. So basically the same thing as before, except now what we'll do is we'll get the X value and plug it into that forward speed multiplied, right? So now, well, because that's off, I see. And now this should also only be on when when we're up in the air and we're holding this, right? So this satisfies at least one condition. Okay, so now if I jump and hold R2, now if I press to the right, we can see it's moving a little strangely. So let's figure out what the cause of that is. And instead, since this is a 2D game, we'll just aim it to the right. Yep. There we go, that works as expected. Okay, so to quickly recap, we have R2 coming in here, and once it's past a certain threshold, it turns on this mover, which keeps us floating in the air. And we also have the left stick coming in, and we use that to determine the forward speed, and that only happens when we're also holding R2. Now we don't want to be able to do this when we're on the ground, so we should probably set up some sort of condition to turn this chip on in the first place. So I'll get out a not gate, and we'll say if we're not on the ground, then we can turn this chip on. So this way, when we're on the ground, if we hold R2, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect our speed or anything like that. Now if we're up in the air, then we can do it, right? Cool. Now say you wanted that to only be a limited time deal, meaning you can't just hold it forever. So we'll get out a selector. So when we're not on the ground, it goes to B, and that turns on a timer that only lasts a certain amount of time, let's say 3 seconds. Once that happens, it switches us back to A and resets the timer. So let's see how this works. You can see we're in the A port. Now if we jump, now we're up in the air and our jetpack logic is working. And when that timer runs out, it switches us back to A. Right, so there's a nice way to have a limited time jetpack use. So obviously you could shorten this. And if you wanted, you could use like a variable and have the players collect items that give them more time, more hover time, for example. So that way, if you wanted to block off a section of your game, you could do so if you had like a really large gap, and that would let the player know that they need to go collect something first and come back, and then maybe later they can access that area. Okay, so now that we have the logic out of the way, let's go ahead and work on the animations just so it doesn't look like he's kind of just float running, right? It looks a little strange. Let's go ahead and work on that. Okay, so I've gotten out a timeline, and we'll go ahead and start keyframing some animations here. Just going to go ahead and make a couple copies. We can go ahead and automatically put the blending. Actually, I think a shortcut around doing that is if you take this and put it on linear, now it'll automatically put the blend in there, right? Okay. Anyways, let's go ahead and keyframe some stuff. So I'm going to scope into the puppet, and let's see, I'm going to use the mirror and get the arms kind of up in the air. And let's see, maybe we'll get start to bring the knees up. I also think I want to kind of lean them back a little bit. There we go. Let's go ahead and move those apart a little bit. Okay. So from the first one, we have nothing, and he transitions to that. Let's see how that looks. We drag this out a little bit better, we can see kind of the incremental. That looks all right. All right, and then now that he's up in floating position, what I think I want to do is actually get rid of these ones. We'll copy some new ones out. Okay, so here's this one, and now this one, let's go ahead and turn off the puppet mirror. I'm going to bring one knee kind of up and kind of have that one go down a little bit. I think the knee that's coming up, the arm will kind of come up too, so the other one will kind of go down. Yeah, something like that. So then the next one, we bring this leg up and that leg down. Kind of bring that one up or down, right? So there we go. So now if we kind of copy these two back and forth, you see we'll have like he kind of goes up, and then he's kind of trying to keep his balance. May actually want to do the arms and legs a little separately so that they're not so in sync. You know, it doesn't look very good. So what I'll do to accomplish that is, let's see, we have this and then those two, so all of these I'll just delete. Okay, and then so for this, I'm actually going to, here's what I'll do. I'll copy this, and I'll copy that one. And now this keyframe won't touch the legs or the hips. Those will just be for the arms. Same thing with this. Won't touch the legs or the hips. It'll just be the arms. Okay. And so these ones will just be the legs. So I can go ahead and get rid of the arms on that. And these ones, get rid of the arms. Okay. So now, if I take both of these two keyframes and keep copying them over, we'll see that the legs are what's working now. Okay, and so we'll have the arms do their thing, except they'll be offset a little bit. So that way it kind of will feel a little bit more natural. Let's go ahead and see how that looks. So this way the arms and the legs will kind of move independently. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Now something happened here. Oh, I see. Maybe we'll do something like that. So I think in this one I'll actually also just get rid of the arms then. We'll just have the arms work completely separately. So get another keyframe. That'll have nothing. So this way the arms will kind of come up and the legs and the arms will work independently from each other. So we're going to want this to loop, right? And we also only want it to happen when we're holding R2, and we're in the air, right? So if we go ahead and put it in here, this will sort of work, but there's going to be some problems. Let's take a look. So I hold R2, and we can see that it's first of all, it's all wonky, and that is because these poses and the procedural animation are on still. So one thing we want to do is get out a keyframe. We'll turn the poses chip off, and we will go into the puppet here and turn off the procedural animation. Okay. And now we'll go ahead and stretch this keyframe so that it's just on while this timeline is playing. Okay. So now if we go back in, we can see that looks a little bit better. It's playing the animation we want, but obviously it's not rewinding, right? And it also plays instantly the second we're in the air. It's not tied to holding R2. And, you know, it just doesn't look the best. So let's go ahead and fix that stuff up. So we could first apply this if we wanted to on here. Now, we also want to rewind this thing every time we do that too. Right? That way it starts off at the beginning. Let's go ahead and make sure that looks right. So it kind of starts the animation, and now it should start it again. Right, and it does. Cool. Now, let's say... just so that we can see this work a little bit better, let's go ahead and increase this timer, go back to 5 seconds. Now we can see the whole animation, right? But at some point that animation is going to end, and maybe our timeline is actually long enough that it doesn't. Let's see. This is how long? Oh yeah, this is 7 seconds. Okay, so if we change this to, say, 10 seconds or 9 seconds, we'll see that at some point this will stop working. Right there, right? He's kind of frozen in the air, and the animation stopped happening. So that doesn't, that's not good, and we want to avoid that. So one thing we can do is at the end of our timeline, we'll put a keyframe, and that will scrub the playhead back. So if I hold L1 and X, I can set this to where I want it to be. So I'll go ahead and set it maybe back here. Let me actually use the beats mode. There we go. So I'll set it there, and this thing will keep changes. So this way, once it reaches the end of this timeline, it should go back to that spot. Okay, so that'll take care of that. And now, let's go ahead and just bring that back down because we don't need it to be super long. We'll just go ahead and do it for 3 seconds. Alright, great. So that looks okay. It looks better now, right? It's a little slow, so maybe we can go ahead and kind of speed it up. Also, one thing that doesn't really look the best, I think we need to adjust his back angle as well. So let's see. Go into here. This is the arms one. Yeah, these are the arms. Maybe I'll go into this keyframe instead. So I kind of want him to lean back and forth a little bit, because he's going to have to catch his balance in a bunch of respects. So go ahead and lean him forward. Lean him back. Lean him forward. Lean him back. Lean him forward. Lean him back. Okay, and that's it. So now let's see how that looks. Oh, let's go ahead and start it. Now we can see he's kind of trying harder to keep his balance. And again, we just need to speed up that opening transition. So let's go ahead and do that. Maybe we'll just increase the whole thing. Let's see. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. Now one thing I don't like is that really fast drop off, kind of as if his jetpack kind of gave up. One thing I think we can do to fix that is, let's see. Well, when the time runs out, we're kind of shit out of luck, right? However, one thing we can do is, if it doesn't run out, we can just pass this through here, and we'll give this some smoothing. Let's say like 3 seconds. Right? So now when I hold R2, if I let go, you can see it kind of drops him off a little gentler. Right? Now I just noticed. Oh. Now one thing I just noticed is this timer needs to reset every time it goes back to A as well. We can actually get rid of that wire. See, I should be able to hold this, but it's not working. So let's see what's going on there. If I jump, and now if I land early, oh, there's another key. Once we hit the ground, then we should be in A. Let's try this. Cool. So the key here is now if we hit the ground, we go back to A. So that'll let us restart the entire process. And so this way, if I let go, you see it drops him off nice and gentle. And if I hold it all the way, then he gets dropped off kind of a little more harshly. Okay, so let's go ahead and just make a little jetpack sculpt here, just so we have something. Okay, there's our little jetpack. Let's go ahead and, I don't know, give it a nice metallic, not so shiny metallic material. Okay, and now we can go ahead and give this thing some paint. So go ahead and paint this. I don't know, we'll try the splat. Now here I'm going to use the draw flex, and so the more you hold the trigger, the thicker the line is, right? So go ahead and something like that. So now go ahead and give this some animation, so it'll definitely loop. Now we can kind of give this more of a fiery color. That looks pretty good, I think. Give it a little bit of throb. Yeah, that looks nice. Alright, so there we go. So in here, this doesn't necessarily have to be in a chip or anything, but it seems like the way to go. So I'll have a pass through. The pass through will turn this on. Okay. Okay, so these two things are going to be a group. Right. Now we can go ahead and link this thing up with the character. Okay. So bring it in, shrink it down yet again. And so here I'm going to switch the, there we go. Okay, so now I'll turn on precise move yet again, stamp it in with the character. It might actually work better with this torso piece. Now let's take a look, make sure it looks right. It doesn't. Okay, I actually think it looked better on the other one then. Okay, so it's looking a little bit better. I think it's just a little bit too close, and maybe we can angle it just outward slightly. Great. Now, does that turn the paint with us? No, it doesn't. I wonder if that's going to be an issue. Now, one thing we want to make sure is this is not collidable. Okay. Let's go back into this. We'll get this little output node. Like so. And we'll plug that into that chip. Okay, and I just noticed that this is pretty off. Oh no, did this break out of the group? There we go. Okay, there we go. Now we got a jetpack that's working. Nice. Okay, and it also has a limited time use. Right, and of course, when we let go, it kind of slows us down. So I think what we want to do is we'll match this. Slow down effect there. So get rid of that. So I think I put this at 3 seconds for the other one, so we'll go ahead and just use the same time. So now we can have this, and it'll kind of, you can see the flame kind of dies a little bit as we fall. Great. Now if you wanted it to like kind of spurt out towards the end, you could do that. But I think I'll leave you to fiddle with that. I think I made it pretty clear how you could do that. Alright, so there we go. There's a jetpack, little jetpack feature that you could add on to a character to allow them to cross over gaps that you wouldn't be able to cross. See, I can't jump over that by default, but now that I got this sweet jetpack, I can. Alright, well anyways, I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please let me know. Leave me some comments in the comment area if you'd like. I always enjoy reading your feedback. Also, right now, there are what are called the impies. And if you go to the InDreams website, you can find it there. And it's basically an award show for dreams. And one of the categories is most helpful dreamer or something like that. Or favorite video creator, something like that. If you feel like nominating me, you can do so until December 4th. It would mean a lot to me if you did, but if you don't, that's okay. I'm still going to be making videos regardless. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe. I'll see you next time. Okay, one last thing we can do is kind of add a little bit of jitter on the hover, right? He looks like he's not moving at all, and that doesn't, I think we can make that look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'll get out a signal generator, and we'll have this sweep rather quickly, and we'll have this go, I don't know, somewhere between like 0.5 and negative 0.5, and that will go into this forward speed on an overwrite. So before it was just at 0, and that's what kept us in the air. But if we have this kind of dipping and growing just the slightest amount, it may look a little bit better. So we'll jump, and we can see how it's kind of going up and down very slightly. And we can play with that and make that look a little bit better. So let's go ahead. Let's say we did this further, and we brought that up to 1 and negative 1. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. Let's see. You can see how it kind of is still doing the same thing, right? So one thing we could do, so you can actually have this on a multiply. And so this thing will start at 0, as close to it as possible. Ooh. Let's try it now. There, so you can, that actually looks pretty cool too. So, you know, this still works, and this just gives it like more character, right? Now it's kind of a goofier jetpack example, but I think it adds some nice weight. So obviously you can play with the values how you want, but to me, maybe that's a little bit much. Let's go ahead and bring these back down. You'll do like 0.5 to 0.5. Try that out. Yeah, see, that looks better. Anyway, I just want to point out that there is an alternative way to do this. And so what I have here is a cube with a follower on it that's constantly following the player's tag. So I have a tag at the player's feet, and this follower here follows that tag except for in the Y direction. So this way it stays at a certain distance above the player. Okay, and this has a tag on it as well. And in this instance, when I hold R2, it turns on a follower on the player that only affects the Y strength, or it only affects the Y in the following, and it follows up to that tag. And so what this does is it makes it so that from the ground, when you turn your jetpack on, there's always just there's a spot that it will always go to, like a certain height. So if you wanted your jetpack to be able to take you up to a certain height no matter what, then this would work really well. Again, you can see that it's just doing that little dipping using the same technique of using a signal generator against a mover on this block, which allows it to move up and down when the player is holding R2. So let me see if I go into test mode. We can see how the block kind of moves up and down, and you can see the player is just following to that tag location. Anyways, there you go. There you have it. There's a working jetpack example of how you could implement this into your character. You can see it wasn't that difficult. We created a sculpt, added some paint, and used a tiny bit of logic. Now this is a little bit messy, so one thing you could do to clean this up is this wire. You could probably use a wireless transmitter, wireless receiver to do the same job. That way you don't have a wire traveling from here all the way out of this chip, and out of here into this separate chip down here. So that'd be one easy cleanup thing there. Let's see, was there anything messy in here? No, okay, that was very simple. So you can see, you know, it really wasn't that complicated. There's a timeline and a couple of movers, and that's it. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead, leave a comment. If you didn't, go ahead, leave a comment. It's all good. And one thing I'd like to mention is right now there's an award show type deal going on in Dreams called the Impies. And there's a bunch of categories. One of them is Most Helpful Dreamer. And if anyone felt like nominating me, I would be honored. If not, that's okay. I'm still going to be making videos because this is something I enjoy doing. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe. I'll see you next time.